Good afternoon. Thank you for sticking with me. This is recorded. I want to note this is super packed here. It's great. Best conference, really. So who am I? I think I'm a dog walker, and I have a nice side job writing Ruby at GitHub. It's nice. I started writing React there as a full stack developer. And I switched my way into the issues platform team. So if issues is not working very well, you can hit me up on Twitter, and I will try to make it better. So there to serve. So as I said, I was a full stack developer. This is the road I took. This is all the languages I paid for salary. I'm now doing 2 years Ruby, before that Python, Clojure, TypeScript, Kotlin, C#, Java, everything. So I don't really have a strong opinion about what is better, static type languages or dynamic. It depends a bit on when you ask me. Yes, I am super happy in Ruby now, but maybe you ask me in 1 year, I'm going to be like, no, never again. Probably not. I'm having a good time. So now a quick check. Please raise your hands. Who knows what Sorbet is? Okay, that's like a decent amount. That's over half. That's great. And who used or is using Sorbet currently? That's like a little bit less, but still more than 0, and I think more than 5. So that's great. So what is Sorbet? Shortly, Sorbet is like a gradual type checker for Ruby. That's like it. Yes, you can add typing to your Ruby, but you can do it in such a way that you don't have to really do all or nothing. You just add a bit of typing, and that's it. So why? Why would you use Sorbet? So I'm gonna give like the short opinion from like why I was doing it at work. In general, it is like I am just the engineer on a team, and we have like a quite old code base. It's like 10 years old, what I'm working on, and it is entangled to everything. And we would like to just refactor this better. And we think that by implementing Sorbet, this is going to get like better. It's going to get easier refactoring and so on. And I was like, I don't have a strong opinion. I have never used Sorbet. So let me give a shot at it. I was like, I'm probably not going to like it that much because, well, I don't know. We'll get to the syntax in a bit, but it is quite in there. But why did we do it? We want to make refactoring our code base easier so we can add more features and also make sure that GitHub gets more performant, that we can break the deployment up and so on. So this is why we're doing it. There might be more reasons, but this is our reason. So let's get to the syntax. Top of the line. If you want to use Sorbet, you have to use this command, like just above or below your frozen string literal. That's always there, yes. And then we can choose different options. Now it's strict. It can also just be true. It can be false, and it can be strong, which we will not see anymore because it's not recommended. But in this case, strict means every method has to have a signature. So we'll get there in a moment. So then you require the Sorbet runtime because the Sorbet is either a static checker, and we also check it at runtime. So we can enable it or disable it. We have to always include some a module. And then we get to like the signature part, which is just normal Ruby code, which is like good and bad at the same time. Like here, it's not that bad. You see, I have a method bar, and it has one param, x param, and it takes integer, and it returns a string. So that's easy. And then we also can say, hey, I don't really care. This is just a method that doesn't work. It has no params, and there's a special syntax. And then we have the way in Sorbet to get out of this typing. As I said, it was gradual typing. In this case, there was like the bar method gets called, but we say, this is unsafe, I want to put a string, even though it had to be an integer, yes? We set it above. So when we call this, currently, if we would execute this code, it would crash, runtime exception, because it is not a string. But we can also turn off Sorbet, the runtime checking, and then it would not crash because, well, it would just work, yes? String to s is also going to be give something. So this is like the short syntax for Sorbet. It is gradual, you have escape hatches, that's it. Alternatively, instead of adding the types inline, we have RBI files. So this is actually just normal Ruby, but we will not type any method definition, only definitions, but no implementations. So in this case, we're not highlighting. We have a small method that says, hey, I'm typed in RBI. So then we have a companion RBI file, path is on the screen, and we define there what is the signature. That is like also used this way for if you have gems that are not typed and so on. So let's continue with how are we now using Sorbet. So as I said, I was just learning this on the go. I was like, I got the assignment, make sure that all our owned files at least get level true. Okay, fine, let's get started. So this was my first like weird situation with Sorbet. Sorbet is actually, doesn't know that the module will be included and has access to the raise method. So this is like, you have to include already kernel before you can call raise. Otherwise you will get an error from the static checker from Sorbet. With highlighting, so there we go. As I said, you have to include kernel because otherwise this will not work. So in Ruby, we actually use modules for like different like ways, yes? So for example, we can have a module that is like defining some kind of interface because we include this toString method. As shown here, we have a signature that says, hey, I need a toString. And then we include it in the user class. And then we can say, hey, toString a string, and we can give the user. That's like normal, yes? If a user includes a module, well, it can pretend to be that thing, what the module is representing. So that's quite good. But then we get like into more difficult situation. There is like a module that acts like a dependency, yes? We just use it to have our code like break up, yes? Our user class or issue class has like 5,000 lines of code. If it is one file, it's bad, so we split it up in 5 files. But then it means that we cannot really include the file anymore. So then there is a feature in Sorbet that is experimental, and I would say if you use Sorbet, just enable this because it is like life is so much harder without it. So you can just say, hey, enable experiment require ancestor feature, and now I can say this module needs to require ancestor a user, so this module needs a user, and then you can go back. Then we just can do something that is defined in the user dependency. So that makes it like way easier, and otherwise you already have to start casting or you have to like typing in RBI files. I don't know, actually, this is just, you need this. Otherwise Sorbet is, yeah, it's not usable, I would say. So then we get into like a harder problem, is that if you have a module, it will not be able to change the type. So what you see here, we have an authorizer that needs a user. Then we have this like dependency that is included in the user, requires ancestor, but when you call this authorizer new, it will not be a user type, because if you don't type this tbind self user, because it will be user dependency. So this is already like getting a little bit annoying, because now you see this kind of patterns all over the place. You have to bind yourself to something else, and you just have to like figure out what it is. It crashes, okay, try something else. Fire up the console and just find out the type. This is a lot of going on, and yeah, we do this to get better like typing, but it's annoying. You have some alternatives here. You can cast it instead of binding. This is just more of the same. Pick your poison. Alternatively, you could also just create a RBI file and say, I will redefine itself. I thought about it only when I was writing this presentation. I haven't tried to get it merged yet. I think it is a good solution, because you can just say way easier, hey, I want to authorize something, and I want to just use itself, and itself is then overwritten in the RBI file. So now the static type checking will just be okay. And on runtime, it's all just fine, because that also satisfies this same dependency, because we know that it will be okay, because this code also worked without Sorbet. And now we get to the part where things get just wonky and not super cool anymore, in my opinion. So this is like type inference. This is a simple thing. If something that's never true, doesn't really matter, then assign. So now this is nillable, because sometimes it's maybe nil, sometimes not. Of course, you get the more difficult code in your own application, but this is like the gist of it. So now, if it's a loop, because of implementation detail, it is not possible for Sorbet to figure out the type. So now we have to do the tlet nil, tnillable. We have to define the type, which is like, yeah, not really great. So then we can write a method, yes, because we have generics in Sorbet. But seriously, at this point, my eyes bleed, because it is like, what is going on here? This is what you have to type to get. We can get to it. So Sorbet has generics. So in this case, I want to just, instead of writing this let definition, I don't want that. So let's make a random retry method that takes a block. Then we have a type parameter, u. Then we have the param, and then there is a special syntax in Sorbet to which works with blocks. The standard block, not any block, but like the anonymous block that you can use with yield. And then we can say, okay, the return value will be this generic type, but nillable. So this is fine. But what is bad about it is that you don't want to have this in your file, because you have to look at it, and it's longer than the implementation almost all the time. That's quite bad. So what we see is that a lot of time we just cast in this situation, because it just, nobody thinks about it. When you start using Sorbet, you don't think like, let's figure out if we have some exotic feature that we can use. So then we have Tapioca. This is made by Shopify. And what Tapioca does, it is a replacement for some RBI generation feature, or maybe downloading feature that was normally in Sorbet itself, but now it's external, like a CLI application. And what it can do is it can download already pre-generated gems for a certain selection of gems, and it can also generate RBI files. This is, for example, super useful if you have like active record models and this kind of active support, like all the meta programming stuff. You can like generate, you can generate like your RBI files instead of writing them by hand. So let's get to the more to the practical side of this. Like we did this implementation, and I think we are quite far at GitHub. But we used type true as a lower bound. We didn't use strict because, well, I don't know actually, because it was this is like the above my pay grade decision, and also I had no clue about this at the point I started working on this. But because the lower bound was type true, it means that we don't have to write signatures, but we still have to do some mangling and so on. So we ended up using a lot of tbind, tmust, tcast. And tbind is, I showed you, you can like assign it to the self variable. If you must, it is must is like specific for nillable. So you say, hey, this is not nil. And casting, we also saw we can just say, no, it's not that type, it's that type, it's some other type. So the thing is, this is all runtime only. So if you do this, you have almost no signatures, and you have a lot of this cast. You only have overhead because you don't have any static guarantees, and still your code will just as easily crash. So you don't have a lot of extra confidence. So I think in hindsight, just having strict as the lower level would be way better for us. But this is me coming to this conclusion, like creating this presentation and thinking like I was not happy with what I was doing. How can I make so? I think I will go back and like, hey, we have to probably increase this to strict and go from there. We also use a lot of unsafe, which is even worse. It's basically, it's only overhead, because unsafe says, hey, I don't care about what it is. It doesn't give you anything. It's not just useful, but it is like what you get if you do the best of your effort, but you also have like, just get it done, yes? And because our assumption was, if we get everything to true, so type true, then we're in a good place. But I think we have like 6,000 times unsafe. We do like 3,000 times casting and so on. So this is like not adding a lot of, it's not adding a lot of features and also not confidence. So the thing about signatures is that signatures can be disabled. I showed it in the first slide. Depending how you configure your Sorbet on startup, signatures just get like erased. They don't add any overhead at this point. But type assertions, they will get disabled, but they're still in your code path. So, and they cannot be easily optimized, not even by YIT, or for example. So it just slows down your code, and they don't really show up how much they slow down. So we run a Sorbet either enabled and disabled. And if I check the overhead, we have like 2% or 1.5% overhead with Sorbet enabled. But if we disable it, we still have those type assertions. So we don't really know how much is the overhead really, because 1.2 is 1.5% is very low, but this might not be the true story. And it doesn't give us that much extra confidence at this point. This is what I was saying about the signatures. You can like never, you can do always. We can always run them in tests. And we can run them only like in a static check. And normally you don't type this, because then it will be overwritten by the default. But it might be good if you have like something that's very expensive. You can just hard code this to test, because you just say, I don't want this to be ever run in production because it's like in a tight loop or something. I don't want this. So then you can just define it like this. This we actually use for the tight loops. So that's quite good. And otherwise, we mostly run, all our tests are run with Sorbet enabled, and production some percent of the machines. I am not 100% sure how much. So what I was saying, this signatures, you can write as much as you want, and it will not cause any overhead because you can turn them off. Assertions, you cannot write as much as you want because they will make it slower for as long as they're in your code. We did a little bit of the small micro benchmarks, and we see that all the assertions, even T on save, which is like weird because it doesn't do anything, is adding a 4 times overhead to not having them in the code, which is quite a lot. Also, if you take in consideration database overhead, it's not that bad. We don't use SQLite, so we need like 150 milliseconds, I guess. We are always slow. I apologize for how slow we are, sorry. And what is good about Sorbet? So what I really like, before Sorbet, I could use like Solar Graph or some other LSP. I could never click to anything. We have such a big code base. I couldn't, maybe if I restarted my code space, maybe for 5 minutes I got it, then it was gone. With Sorbet, it's way better. I can click a lot. Of course, I also end up like, I don't know if someone used TypeScript, you click on something, you get to the TypeScript definition file that are like generated or typed separately, and then you end up in nothing land. But if you then add some nice documentation to your definition, you can still get to the source code. So this is actually quite good. I like it. LSP is also super fast. So that's all good. And generating RBI files is also very powerful, which is also super nice. The problem with it is a little bit that you don't get like, oh, let's start generating some RBI files. This is quite difficult to get started. This is why I didn't do it until very last moment. I tried it a little bit like last week, but so it's not that easy to get started. But I think it's where you want to be when you use Sorbet. Don't write signatures, just generate them, because I don't know, I don't want to see this like generics in my Ruby files. This is like, if I like that, I would just write Scala or Rust, or I don't know. I'm writing Ruby. I don't want all this, like, it's almost like it's crap, yes? You write a new feature. Oh, I created a new file. Oh, now I have to do type true. Oh, now I have to write sorbet signatures, and you leave it's not fun. It's really not fun. But I see the value if you have them. So what's not so good? So generating the RBA files for your dependencies is really slow sometimes. You start a new project, you forget to disable the Rubocop gem in the config of Tapioca, and you can wait 10 minutes, get a coffee, maybe it's done, and then it also generated some errors in the RBI file, so you cannot even use them. So you waited 10 minutes and then you disable it still. This is not a good spot to be in. As I said, writing this Tapioca compiler is not easy, but I think it's good. So maybe we can make this easier or something, because that would make it so much better. Also, reaching for assertions instead of like signatures is maybe just too easy, because you start implementing Sorbet, you start writing it, now it doesn't work. Will I write a signature or will I write an assertion? I know it's correct. I will just say it's correct, but this is exactly what is the problem, why you want to use Sorbet. You want to not, you want to let the compiler do its thing instead of knowing it better. And then I showed you the require ancestor example, and I think the compiler can be better, but Sorbet is written in C++, so I tried to add this feature, but I don't know. I have a lot of languages I tried, but C++ is not on this list, and I don't want to add it to this list, I think. So that's, yeah, you're laughing, but I really want it to be better because this is in my own, I will benefit from it, but yeah, I don't know, this is going to be hard. Verdict. So I talked about some people on Friday night about Sorbet, yeah. It's like, I think it's good, but I cannot imagine that someone will start a new Ruby project and they're going to say like, let's add Sorbet. I like typing so much. I don't think so. This is not what I think will happen. That said, if it gets a little bit easier, say gets added automatically to the Rails, Rails new, and the setup is good, it might be super nice for new Rails developers because of all the magic that we all know. Yes, we type something, we know this is generated, this is what I can use. And for new developers, this is quite difficult. But in the current state, Sorbet is not going to help with that because you create so many more extra problems that it just gets harder. So maybe in the future, but at this point, I think Sorbet is good for big code bases that want to maybe refactor and get some more like confident, more confident about the changes. That's it. Thank you for listening.
Okay, there's one question. Could you see it any further?
Thanks. So I have a question because in our code base we have also like pretty big projects and we use ROM types a lot, but we only validate types for the input parameters. So we validate the actions, the parameters in the controller actions. We validate the workers parameters, the argument list. And if we get the file from the client, the CSV file that we need to process, read the rows out of it, and then calculate and do all this magic, then we validate what is in the row because we get that from the external system. And this is mostly what we validate as types, and we use so. What is benefit of introducing this static or runtime typing for all your classes instead of validate types only for your input and then cover rest with unit tests? Like if you have input in your system validated with types and you have unit tests, what is the benefit of using Sorbet instead or on top of it?
So I would say the benefit is that, say you have a static type language, you will pull forward a lot of potential errors that you get because certain types make sure that certain methods cannot be called and this kind of stuff. So you filter out a certain type of errors. And what you try to do with Sorbet is get some of those guarantees in Ruby. So it's not about input validation. I think you still have to do this, but it is validation on the type level. If you do this and this, so you have validated input, then this is the result. I cannot call this certain thing. Yes, I have filtered something, so I have said this is a user. A user cannot get a certain amount of billing because it's not an enterprise or something, so that can only be done if it's an organization. So in that case, it's good to know what is the type. And this is the part of the benefits that you would like to get.
Thank you for the great talk. I was wondering if you know how the runtime checks are implemented. Is it perhaps on top of TracePoint API?
I have no clue.
Okay, because RBS does it on top of TracePoint, and I was wondering, you mentioned the performance impact. I was wondering if it's the slowness of TracePoint or something else.
I wanted to get into that. So John Hartern, yes, he works at GitHub. He's like very much involved in everything. Like, I like this typing, but it is slow. Why are we using it? So, no, okay, I don't. It is recorded. It's problematic. But he's way more into this, and there's a lot of great people there. And I was trying to dive into it, and I think we will get more into it. Hit me up if you want to know more, and I gladly stay in touch. But I don't know the answer now. So.
Thanks for the great talk. Am I doing a correct sentiment analysis that you would prefer it to be way more automated and more like types being on the side of the actual code and not like obstructing your implementations?
Yes. Yeah.
Right. Any other questions? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, Erwin Kroon.